conventional economic terminology. That of what is called private or acquisitive capital is both the older and the wider. These were the original root idea from which the narrower concept of social or productive capital was afterward separated. It is therefore logical to begin our investigation by inquiring into the connection between private capital and money. Baumwold defined private capital as the aggregate of the product that serves as a means to the acquisition of goods. It has never been questioned that money must be included in this category. In fact, the development of the scientific concept of capital starts from the notion of an interest-bearing sum of money. This concept of capital has been borrowed little by little, until at last it has taken the form which it bears in modern scientific discussion. On the whole, in approximate coincidence with popular usage, the gradual evolution of the concept of capital has met at the same time an increasing understanding of the function of money as capital. Early in history, the layman discovered an explanation of the fact that money alone bears interest, that money, in fact, works. But such an explanation as this could not long satisfy scientific requirement. Science therefore countered it with the fact that money itself is barren. Even in ancient times, general recognition must have been accorded to the view which later in the shape of the maxim pecuniam paret non potest was to be the basis of all discussions of the problem of interest for hundreds and even thousands of years, and Aristotle undoubtedly did not state it in the famous passage in his Politics as a new doctrine, but as a generally accepted commonplace. Despite its obviousness, this perception of the physical unfruitfulness of money was a necessary step on the way to full realization of the problem of capital and interest. If sums of money are loaned to bear fruit, and it is not possible to explain this phenomenon by the physical productivity of the money, then other explanation must be sought. The next step toward an explanation was provided by the observation that after a loan is made, the borrower as a rule exchanges the money for other economic goods, and that those owners of money who wish to obtain a profit from their money without lending it to the same. This was the starting point for the extension of the concept of capital referred to above, and for the development of the problem of the money rate of interest into the problem of the natural rate of interest. It is true that centuries passed before these further steps were accomplished. At first, there was a complete half in the development of the theory of capital. Further progress was in fact not desired. What was already attained suffices perfectly for the aim of science. Then was not to explain reality but to vindicate ideas. And public opinion disapproved of the taking of interest. Even later, when the taking of interest was recognized in Greek and Roman law, it was still not considered respectable, and all the writers of classical times strove to outdo one another in commending it. When the Church adopted this proscription of interest and attempted to support its attitude by quotation from the Bible, it cut the ground away from beneath on unauthorized attempt to deal with the matter. Every theorist who turned his attention to the problem was already convinced that the taking of interest was harmful, unnatural, and uncharitable, and found his principal task in the search for new objection to it. It was not for him to explain how interest came to exist, but to sustain the thesis that it was reprehensible. In such circumstances, it was easy for the doctrine of the sterility of money to be taken over uncritically by one writer from another as an extraordinarily powerful argument against the payment of interest, and thus not for the sake of its content but for the sake of the conclusion it supported, to become an obstacle in the way of the development of interest theory. It became a help and no longer a hindrance to its development. When a move was made toward the construction of a new theory of capital after the downfall of the old canonist theory of interest, its first effect then was to necessitate an extension of the concept of capital and consequently of the problem of interest in popular usage and in the technology of scholar. Capital was no longer sum of money of loan, but accumulated stock of goods. The doctrine of the unfruitfulness of money has another significance for our problem. It shed light on the position of money within the class of things constituting private capital. Why do we include money in capital? Why is interest paid for sums of money on loan? How it is possible to use sums of money even without lending them so that they yield an income? There can be no doubt about the answer to these questions. Money is an acquisitive instrument only when it is exchanged for some other economic goods. In this respect, money may be compared with those consumption goods that form part of private capital only because they are not consumed by their owner themselves, but are used for acquisitions of other goods or survive by means of exchange. Money is no more acquisitive capital than these consumption goods are. The real acquisitive capital consists in the goods for which the money or the consumption goods are exchanged. Money that is lying idle, that is, money that is not exchanged for other goods, is not a part of capital, its product, no fruit. Money is part of the private capital of an individual only if and so far as it constitutes a means by which the individual in question can obtain other capital goods. 3. Money not a part of social capital. By social or productive capital, one means the aggregate of the productions intended for employment in further production. If we accept the views expounded above, according to which money cannot be included among productive goods, then neither can it be included in social capital. It is true that formal work includes it in social capital, as the majority of the economists that preceded him had done. This attitude followed logically from regarding money as a productive good. This is its only justification, and in endeavoring to show that money is not a productive good, we have implied how baseless a justification is in. In any case, perhaps we may suggest that those writers who include money among productive goods and consequently among capital goods are not very considerate. Then they usually reckon money as a part of social capital in that division of their system where they deal with the concept of money and capital. But certain obvious further conclusions are not drawn from this. On the contrary, where the doctrine of the nature of money as capital should logically be applied, it appears to have been suddenly forgotten. In reviewing the determinant of the rate of interest, writers emphasize over and over again that it is not a greater or smaller quantity of money that is of importance, but the